Look. So, are you ready? Okay. Thank you for coming and surviving the heat of the day. We're going to continue now with a very interesting session, very pertinent, very topical, very relevant, from the School of Journalism, Mass Communications. Professor Dan Hollis has been teaching an AI in journalism class, which has been absolutely pioneering and groundbreaking. So it's very exciting. But we're going to continue now. Presentation we have is the ethics of integrating artificial intelligence in journalism, part 1 and part 2. So a big round of applause, please.
Hello, my name is Jada Mills. Our goal as journalists in the W. Page Pitt School of Journalism and Mass Communications is to bring authentic work to our readers. But we cannot ignore the rise of artificial intelligence use in our society. Therefore, as a class, JMC 481, experimenting with AI in journalism, we conducted a series of experiments using artificial intelligence, specifically with ChatGPT and Microsoft's Copilot. With these experiments, we tested how AI can be a useful tool versus how it cannot be, pertaining to several aspects of journalism in order to understand both the capabilities and the limitations of this developing technology. Over the course of this semester, we conducted numerous experiments pertaining to AI in journalism. Today, we are showing you 6 of those experiments. 3 of us conducted individual research on the strengths of using AI in journalism, while the other 3 of us conducted research on the weaknesses pertaining to the technology. Throughout our experiments, we considered the ethics, accuracy, and efficiency of AI technology, and we'll share those findings today. The first part of our research discusses the strengths of using AI in journalism. We found 3 main strengths pertaining to journalistic AI use: interview question generation, quote selection, and AI detection software. For my personal portion of the research, I asked the essential question of, can AI generate fact-driven interview questions based off of transcription? For the experiment, I used the version of artificial intelligence known as ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a form of generative AI that responds accordingly to the prompt that it is given. Before giving AI the prompt, I personally read the State of the State address given by Patrick Governor Morrissey and came up with 3 questions highlighting the topics of the food dye ban, the DEI executive order, and the opioid crisis that impacts our state. Once I did that, I then gave ChatGPT this prompt. Using this transcription of the State of the State address given by Patrick Morrissey, what are some interview questions I could ask Morrissey about the topics that were covered in his speech? For research purpose, I was intentionally vague with the prompt that I entered into ChatGPT. ChatGPT was able to quickly generate 23 potential questions for Morrissey, and AI also categorized these questions based off the topics that Morrissey discussed. These topics were organized in budget and fiscal responsibility, energy and economic development, tax reform and workplace development, education in schools, conservative policy priorities, crime, addiction, and crime, immigration, and drug addiction, and then finally a closing and general questions category. AI noted at the end of the response that the questions it provided are designed to push for specifics on key topics while also allowing for follow-ups. So these are the human questions that I generated, my own questions. Following the executive order around DEI programs that was issued, there have been a lot of people in West Virginia concerned about how it will affect not only our programs, but also individuals. What is your team and the legislator going to do about the minorities in the state who this will directly affect? A big concern for our state is the opioid crisis. How are you planning to face this issue and not only help in recovery, but also bring more awareness around the children of addicts who are being affected? A big takeaway from your address was your plans of banning red dye 40 and other harmful food dyes from West Virginia. What does this look like for our state, and how will this affect our economy? These are the questions that AI generated around the same topics. I want to note that I picked out the 3 questions that were in the same category of my questions in order to compare them. You signed an executive order eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in state government and universities. What do you say to critics who argue this will harm diversity efforts in West Virginia? I didn't really like this question because it's asking, what do you say to critics who, argue? I didn't like, the question itself was okay, but it definitely needs reworded. It needs that human aspect in that question. You can see that this question was very robotic and, it just wasn't very conversational. So I've noticed that was a red flag about the AI generated questions. Another question was, you said West Virginia has the highest drug overdose rate in the country. What new initiatives are you launching to combat the opioid and fentanyl crisis? Another one was, you introduced the 4 pillars of a healthy West Virginia, which include initiatives like banning certain food dyes and restricting the use of SNAP benefits for purchasing soda. How do you anticipate these measures will impact public health outcomes in the state's economy? The questions AI provided were overall accurate in the sense that they directly mentioned statewide issues, budget concerns, crime and addiction, and the DEI executive order. But they also use language like you said, you signed, and you've introduced, which I believe is good because it shows that AI can reference back to Morrissey's specific actions and his talking points. AI definitely got the overall points across, and the baselines of my questions and the AI questions were the same, but the downfall to the AI questions, like I said, were that they were more robotic and technical than my questions. While reading the transcription of my own, I was specifically looking for details, and I was trying to pinpoint three main points to address. Meanwhile, AI was able to generate seven topics in 10 seconds or less. It took me 20 seconds to read and come up with my own questions. And like I said, it took AI 10 seconds to scan the transcription and generate the 23 questions. While I do not think the questions were more creative or more personable than mine, I do think AI can help with highlighting topics quicker, and can find different angles to look at. I also want to note that I did not ask AI to categorize the questions for me for the different topics, but after further research, I found that the way that you construct the prompt and the information that you give AI will determine the outcome. The more specific and detailed that you are with the question, the more likely you will receive better results that fit the criteria you are seeking. My overall findings were that AI can accurately and effectively assist journalists with generation of interview questions based on specific topics, but it should not be doing the work for a journalist. It can assist a journalist without crossing the ethical threshold, but the journalist needs to fact check the questions, and the journalist should make changes and changes of the question to fit their story better. Using AI for interview question generation is especially useful for journalists when dealing with tight deadlines, as AI can accurately summarize key points, filter out unnecessary information, and quickly generate questions on a specific topic, which does cut down the prep time in half for a journalist, which allows more time for the interview itself and as well as writing and construction of the article. This is my presentation. I will now be passing it over to Wade.
Thank you, Jada. So for my portion of our research, I wanted to see what the capabilities of AI were in terms of finding quotes within a transcript. So one of the most tedious things to do as a journalist is go through recordings or transcripts of interviews and pick out quotes that give our story the character they need to be great. Using AI models, I have found that in some cases, it can be very helpful in sifting through these transcripts and picking out quotes that work well in a given story. For a story written for the Parthenon on February 27th, I conducted 5 interviews with students totaling about 10 minutes of content. For the story, I manually sifted through this transcript, and in the story, I had selected 6 quotes from 3 different people. This in itself took me about 2 hours, and another 2 hours were spent picking where to put the quotes and writing the story itself. So 4 total hours were spent looking through the interviews and writing. While on a 1 to 2 story per day schedule, these 4 hours are 4 hours very well spent. However, some days in our careers are going to be packed full of stories that need to be written and need to be written fast. Finding quotes for these stories can be the most time-consuming part of the writing process, and my experiments have produced results that suggest that AI can be an effective solution to this problem. Behind me, you will see 3 of the quotes that I chose for my story about the DEI protest on February 27th. These quotes were selected because I believe that they tell the best story without diverging from the subject matter of the story itself. Sorry. This quote by Lily Ramsire in particular is one of the strongest ones in my opinion. Marshall for all is not just for able-bodied white men, it is for everyone, it is for anyone. And for my experiment, I had asked the AI model, ChatGPT, to sift through this transcript and select what it believed were the strongest quotes from it. And the results were quite pleasing to me. Here are some of the quotes that an AI model, ChatGPT, selected as the best ones in the transcript, as well as reasons why. You will see that the quote from Lily Ramsire that I just mentioned is right here. So AI believes that it is one of the strongest quotes. Without the 2 people whose quotes I left out of the story from the transcript, if you'll remember, I mentioned that I had interviewed 5 people, AI gave me 8 strong quotes from 3 people. Of these 8, I used 6 of them in my story, and I did not use any quotes that AI chose to leave out of its selection, proving that at least in this specific case, that AI can be a very useful tool in helping a journalist sift through and select quotes from a transcript. I did the same experiment with 3 more stories that I've written, and out of all of the quotes that I used, 18 out of 20 were quotes that AI had selected as the strongest ones in the story's given transcript. This proves that AI has a reasonable level of effectiveness in helping journalists choose quotes, and I think that this should be looked at further. Thank you. I will be moving on. I will be giving the presentation now to Ms. Baylee Parsons.
Thank you, Wade. My name is Baylee Parsons, and today I'm going to be sharing with you some of my research on using AI checkers to detect AI-generated content. As students in Marshall University's School of Journalism and Mass Communications, we believe that our courses should help prepare us for our futures. An essential part of learning journalism is to actually get out and do journalism, which is why AI programs such as ChatGPT are taking away from students' experiences and potentially devaluing degrees in the SOJMC. The SOJMC has 5 program outcomes for its students. The first of these is that graduates should be creators of compelling and engaging content. The last of these says we should demonstrate confidence and skill from our hands-on experiences. Our students cannot meet these outcomes if AI is doing the work for them, which is why our professors should implement the use of AI checkers into their grading processes. AI checkers, like chatbots, are advanced machine learning models that are trained to assess how much of a work is AI generated. In other words, AI checkers are AI. Like chatbots, AI checkers are trained on thousands of human-generated and AI-generated text. And then when analyzing a piece for AI, they look at the sentence structure, they look at the linguistic patterns and stylistic choices, and they compare them to text that they were trained on. Although most AI checkers warn users that they make mistakes, some also claim to have 98 to 99% accuracy rates. So for my experiment, I tested 3 popular AI checkers: GPT-0, ZeroGPT, and Grammarly. I ran the same story through each of them to determine which was the most efficient, if any. I did this 4 times, adding an element of AI each time. The first story was one of mine, so I knew that none of the content had been generated by AI. All of the models came back with 0% AI scores or very low percentages. For the next story, I asked ChatGPT to edit my story in AP style. And not to brag, but I was a copy editor, so there weren't that many mistakes. All of the percentages actually decreased across the models, and so they thought the writing was more human-generated than before. Next, I asked Grammarly to rewrite my story. While Grammarly still showed 0%, the other checkers showed the highest percentages yet, which could be problematic because I know a lot of students use Grammarly. Lastly, I asked ChatGPT to write a news story without giving it any outside information. All of the models detected AI writing patterns and phrases coming back with 100% or a very high percentage. When I asked ChatGPT why its story would come back as AI generated through an AI checker, it told me that it wouldn't. So when I told it that it did, it maintained its confidence and said that it writes in a manner that cannot be detected by an AI checker, which goes to show that the AI checkers are actually more reliable than the chatbots. Of the 3 AI checkers I tested, I determined that GPT-0 is the most efficient. Not only did it have the most accurate percentages, but it was also the most consistent with its percentages. GPT-0 highlights sentence and lists vocabulary that seems AI generated. And unlike the other 2, it gives an explanation as to why it flagged these things as AI. What you're seeing here is just the basic scan, but GPT-0's premium plan offers an advanced scan and a plagiarism scan. Seeing how many professors are already using programs like Turnitin, purchasing subscriptions to GPT-0 for our professors and student organizations would be an efficient and ethical solution to the problem of fully AI-generated content. This concludes the strengths of AI portion of our presentation. Please hold your questions until the end. I will now invite Sarah Davis.
Thank you, Baylee. Hi, I'm Sarah Davis. And we've heard the effective uses of AI in journalism, generating strong interview questions, selecting the best quotes for a story, and detecting AI in stories. And while all these components can be useful in the field, there's no doubt that using AI can also open up a world of error. Without careful supervision, AI can make significant errors while copy editing, selecting a target audience, and while creating essential graphics for a story. Let's explore these a little bit further. When utilizing AI as a copy editor, the software doesn't quite measure up. The copy editing process is an essential part of the journalistic formula. The Associated Press style is a set of writing guidelines widely used by news media. AP style focuses on the concise, consistent writing for newspapers, television and radio, and other media outlets. AI does not show a full understanding of what writing in AP style means. I fed my recent news story on Zach Bryan's concert announcement to ChatGPT and asked it to revise my story according to AP style guidelines. And to put it simply, I wasn't impressed. First, AI added a dateline to the beginning of the story. This is incredibly problematic because it gives the reader the impression that my story was written by the Associated Press when it wasn't. AI did provide me a rundown of what edits were made, which in theory is a good feature, but when the edits aren't completely correct, all praises go out the window. The majority of the edits were simply rephrasings or reassembling sentences, which I found not to be specific to AP style. I fed ChatGPT another recent story that I wrote to prove this point even further. This time, I added a few errors to test AI skills. While copy editing, AI modified 2 quotes and did not take out the extra commas that I had added. It also wrongfully added quotation marks around a non-quoted statement. Modifying and falsifying quotes for any reason is completely unethical, even if it's for what AI calls smoother readability and clarification purposes. This shows that AI software cannot consistently differentiate quotes from other sentences in the story, and it does not understand the importance of journalistic integrity. I also wanted to test AI's design skills, so I fed this intentionally bad Parthenon page to see what it would find and suggest that I correct. And I was sure that ChatGPT would suggest that I fix the symmetry, but I was looking for a few extra details to catch: incorrect titles and dates. Once again, I was disappointed. AI missed significant errors, including those incorrect dates and misspelled words that I mentioned before. This is incredibly worrisome, especially if the journalist is depending on AI to fully edit their work. Another aspect of this that I would like to touch on is ChatGPT's lack of a backbone. After I saw the pitiful job it did editing the PDF, I confronted it with its mistakes, and I pointed out the fact that it missed these important details. When I asked ChatGPT to try again, the first 2 mistakes it pointed out were the incorrect dates and the misspelled words that I had told it previously that it missed. Although it may be somewhat harmless in this example, it is worrisome to see how fast AI will adapt and change its opinion based on the prompt and the prompter. And given the rise of AI use in our field, the Parthenon this semester implemented its first AI policy for all staff, If you guys didn't know, all of us have had experience with the Parthenon at some point, and I'm also the executive editor of the Parthenon this semester. And the Parthenon does not condone the use of AI in any way regarding news writing. But one specific portion of this policy that I wanted to spotlight was the reason behind why we don't welcome AI into our newsroom, because we are all here to learn. And it says, the Parthenon highly values human-generated work and therefore expects its staff members to put forth the effort necessary to produce a physical paper weekly and publish online stories frequently. Staff members should use this as an opportunity to learn all facets of a news publication firsthand. We're here to learn. And what are you going to learn if you succumb your efforts to a ChatGPT bot? The value of using AI to copy edit is insignificant because the software cannot be fully trusted. Everything must be double checked, and at that point, the journalists can spend less time doing it themselves. Now you'll hear from Kaitlyn.
Hi, I'm Kaitlyn Fleming, and for my portion of the project, I conducted research by using ChatGPT to generate a news article targeting a specific audience. So using the transcript from Trump's State of the Union address, I asked ChatGPT to generate a news article using only quotes from the transcript and telling it to target an Appalachian audience. And you can see here the generated article with the quotes in that article referencing radical Islamic terrorism, gaining the land of Greenland, the war in Ukraine, a man killed at a Trump rally, and the promise to build the wealthiest communities in the world. And I found quickly that AI cannot recognize the depth behind quotes and the target audiences that they impact. But beyond the quotes and getting to the meat of the article, you can see that ChatGPT focused on the old-fashioned and stereotypical idea of Appalachians living in low-income areas or haulers. And you can see in the closing remarks that ChatGPT focuses specifically on Trump's golden age and the fight to change the destiny of Appalachians, which is unethical for several reasons. First, not every Appalachian needs rallying to better their lives. And second, it's stereotypical to pigeonhole an entire group of people as hicks who live in haulers. So I actually have a question for the audience. How many people have felt targeted by Appalachian stereotypes? I have as well, which sparked the inspiration behind this target audience. And when asked why this article targets an audience of Appalachians, ChatGPT said by focusing on values such as traditional family values and self-reliance, that these quotes in the article target an Appalachian audience. And while these may seem like positive attributes, it can be harmful to pigeonhole an entire group of people in one category, which is something that AI seems to do a lot of in terms of targeting a specific audience. And now the quotes used targeted national issues, yes. However, the connections made to Appalachia were loose and based on harmful stereotypes of Appalachians being content with self-reliance or universal generalizations made in regards to family values. Also, ChatGPT directly acknowledged using common stereotypes, making this oversight even more dangerous due to the module's intentions to utilize a stereotype that remains harmful to millions of people. And there are several negative ethical implications to this. First, there's a bias in audience segmentation. AI modules are trained on historical data, and their existing biases may be reflective of this. And this is something that a human journalist can have the ability to spot or just not include at all. Second, harmful generalizations made by AI-driven content may categorize people in ways that reinforce discrimination, which is again something that a human journalist could avoid. Third, this creates echo chambers. AI-generated content can prioritize audience engagement over diversity, therefore bouncing its own dated ideas off of itself, creating an echo chamber. And lastly, there's just a general lack of human judgment. A human journalist can apply ethical reasoning, cultural awareness, and contextual understandings, which is something that an AI module simply lacks. Only humans can accurately spot these sensitivities, therefore it's unethical to use AI to target specific target audiences. And that concludes my portion of the research, and I'll be turning it over to Caden Adkins.
Hi, my name is Caden Adkins, and for my portion of the research, I focused on AI image and graphic generation. As you all may have noticed, AI image generation is a bit of a hot topic, especially given the recent release of ChatGPT 4.0. Although it is impressive and can be used to create some very unique looking visuals, its use in journalism is unethical as it directly goes against the ethics of photojournalism. According to the National Press Photographers Association, images shall not be manipulated in any way that misleads or misrepresents subjects. Although AI is very powerful and can be used to create almost impossible to perceive from real-life images, any work created by AI is in and of itself misleading. We as students of the W. Page Pitt School of Journalism take pride in our ability to tell stories while also presenting the facts and nothing but the facts. And by using AI to create visuals, we are taking away from our full potential as writers, editors, and photographers to be the best that we can be. Over the course of the past few months, we have played around with the abilities of AI programs and how able they are to create visuals. And our findings have brought us to the conclusion that the work that AI creates is misleading and sometimes blatantly nonsensical. As you can see from the two images here, I had two separate AI programs create two separate images, and they look pretty all right at first glance, but as you examine further, you really start to see problems within its work. The first image, which was created by Canva's built-in AI program, I prompted it to generate a picture of a reporter in front of Marshall University, and if you look right there, that is most definitely not Marshall University. And if you examine it even further, it actually is Marshall University. So the second image was created by Adobe Firefly, and it was asked to generate an image of Marshall University's old main building located in Huntington, West Virginia. Once again, that's not Marshall. Moving on to our experiment. Since the earliest stages of news, political cartoons have been a staple of American media. Icons such as Uncle Sam and Rosie the Riveter are some of the most recognizable icons of all time. What is one thing that all three of these icons have in common? They were all created by human beings, not the input of a computer. For our experiment, we wanted to test the capabilities of AI and see how well it can create accurate political cartoons. And as you can see, the results were not ideal. Created within Microsoft's Copilot, we asked the program to generate a political cartoon based on the day-to-day struggles that West Virginians face, and that's what it came up with. The results are pretty subpar at best. You can see that an attempt was made by the AI to produce a compelling cartoon. However, it falls flat on its face compared to the other cartoons previously shown. Looking at the image, you can see that the image is distorted, the text is nonsensical, some words on there aren't even in the English language, and the message is unclear and shallow at best. Although it can be used to create cartoons like this, this is nowhere near what humans have done for hundreds of years with icons such as Uncle Sam and Rosie the Riveter, and so on and so forth. I'm sure I've made my opinion on AI being used as a tool to create visuals very clear, and these reasons listed over here are all valid criticisms. Photographers such as Wade over here strive to capture the best images and visuals that they possibly can and have been doing so for decades upon decades. We should not allow a program that creates images out of nowhere to take away from the wonderful work that photographers such as Wade provide us with. This experiment was on a very small scale. However, if AI were to become the normal in journalism, then would any image we see on the front page be real, or would we all be misled and questioning the validity of it? Thank you for your time.
So this concludes the research portion of our presentation, and I just have a few words I'd like to say. While AI does not currently replace the creativity and critical thinking of a journalist, it can assist us in some aspects of reporting, as we have found through our research. We believe that as of right now, AI should be strictly used as a tool for journalistic practice with a lot of human oversight and fact-checking to ensure accuracy, fairness, and creativity. The key is to use AI as a partner rather than a replacement, allowing journalists to focus on the elements of storytelling that require human insight and expertise to ensure the truth is always being reported. Misuse of this technology in journalism practices can lead to inaccuracies, bias, and loss of journalistic integrity, making ethics a top priority in the decision-making of artificial intelligence use. This concludes our presentation. We are now opening the floor to any questions. Anybody have it? Yes.
So you've sort of captured the state of play right now as regards to AI impact on journalism. But what are your thoughts about the future, particularly with agentic AI or artificial general intelligence, which is human-level AI, which would be able to real-time respond to emotional cues and visual feedback from people being interviewed and ask questions accordingly? Where do you feel this is going, and how do you feel this could impact in the future of journalism?
Personally, I see this still being used hand in hand with human journalists and not being a separate entity. Maybe 15, 20, 30 years from now, whenever the differences between AI and humans are completely indistinguishable, we can move back to that and maybe see if there's any difference of thoughts there.
We wanted to focus on using AI specifically as college students. And we believe that college students, that this is a fundamental learning time. And so even if AI does get to the point where it could totally mimic our writing, we believe we should not be using it to write our stories, to like pull the heavyweight for us, because we should be using this time to learn. And then once we get a job, if they want to use that, then that's at their discretion. But here in our school, we think that we should be learning how to do it ourselves. Yes.
Yes.
I have a question for you. So the questions that AI wrote, every single one of them, it was this program that you developed and that you, is that confrontational?
Definitely. I think there was a lot of problems with those questions. That's why I think as a journalist, if you do, use AI to help you, you change the questions, you change the aspect of it to make it not confrontational, at all. Because like you said, we want to be unbiased.
Right. You want them to answer the question.
Exactly. Without getting defensive, like you said, or, so more of a question. And that was, a lot of it was like a statement. You did this, now what is the effects? It's more like, why? We want the whys and the actual meat of the questions. But I think AI can help with like getting the idea across and helping a journalist maybe think of some more questions that you would not have thought of in that moment. And it also helps with a little bit of efficiency around that.
Yeah, my question veers off a little bit. I was especially taken with the stereotyping, and I can't remember which of you, I thought it was, but I didn't want to say. And I guess I'm curious if you've been able to kind of put some of that information out into the community and see what the response is to it, because if this is if ChatGPT or AI is generating this information, where is it coming from, and how do people from West Virginia or Appalachia in general feel about that? Because it's I would think there would be a huge pushback.
Yeah, I imagine if a human journalist wrote that portion of it, that there would definitely be backlash. So you would think there would be the same backlash for a ChatGPT generated article. So that's something to look into in the future and see if people find it offensive.
And I'm wondering, how did they find those stereotypes are from when I was.
Right. Yeah, they're trained on historical data. So back to the echo chamber, it kind of just has dated ideas that it bounces off of itself, is what I've noticed from my portion of the research at least.
Another guess that I would have towards that is, not only journalistic articles are these models based off of, they have watched every single movie in existence, they have read every single book. And unfortunately, most of that media provides a negative stereotypes of this region. Mm-hmm. Dark Waters with Mark Ruffalo, I think is his name. It produces a very negative stereotype of the town that I'm from. A much different town than what was represented in that movie. So I think that's something that these AI models do provide a negative stereotype of Appalachia.
We actually proved that because we started doing this. When we started doing this research, we thought that if you asked ChatGPT something, that it could just pull it from the internet immediately. And so when we were working with the Trump's State of the Union address, I asked it, I did not give it the transcript, and it was giving me information and quotes from his State of the Union address in 2016. 2016. So it did not have any information on this year.
Any more questions? Last question.
Thank you for recognizing that this college is time to learn. It's a tool. And again, I think you're all excited that you're not hand-setting type department on every week. Some technology is good. Yes. But I want you're all journalism students and you understand ethics, which I wish all of journalists understood. But how do you feel your friends in other disciplines? Are they as willing to say, this is a tool and I shouldn't be using it to write my history paper or my English paper? Or do you feel it's the journalism ethics that are making you see this?
I do think it is the journalism
is,
ethics that are making us see it
Yes.
differently, because I have friends in other colleges, and they definitely view ChatGPT as a tool, and I don't think they're really concerned with like the ethical standpoint of it,
Mhm.
which is something that journalism students are taught from the beginning. So it is kind of disheartening to see people use ChatGPT to write their English paper, but it's definitely common.
Yeah, I have to say, my ears really perked up when you were talking about using grammar. Because in college ed, everything is, you have to see it, it has to happen in your classroom for my students to write about it. But I never thought about that. Coming up with some ideas and then putting it into ChatGPT, to actually generate their papers. I'm just like, boy, that was like.
If I provide an AI with a prompt, it takes about 10 seconds to write a 2,000 word paper.
And most don't proofread it, I will say.
Well, we're out of time, but let's thank our panelists again. There's now, next up, or it's started, I believe, a lunchtime presentation in the Mars room. Lunch is provided, so I recommend you go there if you want something to do next. Thank you very much.
Oh, yes, we do need a picture.